Welcome to Epic Cycles. My name is Paul. Today we're going to do another unboxing video of a brand new bike called the Magnum Pilot. This bike is going to be a mid-motor bike and a step-through design. It's going to come in 3 different colors. We're going to have it in black, we're going to have it in blue, and red. And now we're going to unbox this one. We're going to build this and take you through the steps of building it and show you all the little goodies that it has. The first part, got the box open, bike's in the box, nicely packaged, all protected. And the first part, we're just going to cut off all the stuff. So I'm just going to start taking the zip ties off really quick. Wheel. This bike's going to have a 12 millimeter or 12 millimeter through axle on it. Nice seal bearing hub, through axle design, large rotor, and I really like the white wall tires. I think that sets off everything really nice. And still taking all the stuff off. One thing you'll like about this new bike, especially with the cable routing, they did a nice job tethering all the cables to one side. It's going to make for a very nice, neat, clean look on the front of the bike. It's looking like a bike already. Again, nicely wrapped. Take the cover off of that. There we go. Stainless steel mounts, adjustable stays, and there's our bridge clip. Put that aside. Sure wanted to be careful about protecting this bike. That's a good job. And there it is. And now that it's unwrapped, we're going to start getting ready to build it. So here you can see, all cleaned up, all the packaging off, looking really nice, beautiful bright finish on it. Battery is going to be hidden underneath the frame in here. When I get to the key later, we'll disconnect that and show you how that comes apart. Mid-drive motor down below, 10-speed drivetrain using a micro-shift drivetrain. It has a clutch on it as well. The clutch is going to stop or resist chain slap, which is a nice function on there as well. Again, 10 speeds to climb through, lots of hill climbing ability, and of course top gear as well. You're going to have it's going to be a torque sensor. So in all gears, you're going to have a useful, actual functional type drive on it. Very fluid, very responsive. You're really going to like the way this works. It's super smooth. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to start building up some of the parts on it. I'm going to start with the head tube up here, putting the bar on. So first thing I'm going to grab, Just gonna grab myself a 5mm Allen key. I'm gonna take the headset cap off. This part won't be necessary. The fork is on the floor. I didn't want to raise the bike off because I didn't want the fork to fall out of the frame. So we're just gonna take this cap off. This little spacer we won't be needing either. And we'll be ready to put the bar on in a moment. Inside the star nut, like most of my videos, I always put a little bit of grease on any fitting that I put on. And now we're gonna start setting the bars. And you'll see that the cables are nicely rooted, and you may just wanna make sure that there's no twist to it. So take a look to make sure that the cables have a smooth routing. If they're twisted, they're gonna sort of look like this. And that seems to almost pass. And is it actually untwisted? That's actually not bad. I kind of prefer that sort of setup. So very, very easy to make that look nice and clean. We're gonna press the stem over it. Inside of the stem is where our anchor bolt is. It's gonna go down into that star nut. So I'm just gonna put this over the stem, or over the steer column actually. This part's called the stem actually. And we're just gonna wiggle that down a bit. It may not go all the way down right away. It's okay, we're not worried about full installation until we start tightening the screw. Lifting the quick release, this allows you to adjust your handlebar and the levelness of the bar too. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop it down to get access to the stem bolt here. And we're gonna leave that lever flipped up so that it doesn't cover the bolt. Now, again, we're gonna go to a 5mm Allen key. I want something that's gonna be deep enough to go inside. So I happen to have an Allen key with a long shaft on it. Just gonna drop that down inside of there and start drawing down this stem bolt. Now this is an adjustment. It's not necessarily a tightening. So you can see I'm just using 2 fingers to draw it down. I'm gonna feel some resistance here. And that's pretty much it. I don't wanna crank this tight because I want the headset to turn smoothly. And we may even adjust that one more time when the bike is finished. We're just gonna call this a preset. Now I can set the bar up to where I might like it, which you can adjust later on as well. So I'm gonna put it up at about a 45-degree angle, put the bars at a nice neutral position where the bars are sort of flat at the tops. Brake levers you may adjust later. I kind of like the way this came out of the box. The levers are at a nice angle. I'm gonna clamp this down. Now this is also adjustable. So even though I've clamped it and it's adjustable by hand, you may need a bit of a tool to sort of make it tight. So I'm gonna loosen this again. I want this clamping action to be a little bit tighter. So behind here on this shaft, there's again a 5mm Allen key, and I'm gonna put some tension on that. I'm gonna test the lever, and I wanna feel resistance, kind of like you're feeling here. And then we push it down. That's going to give a stronger bond or binding action on that. Just going to move the display up for a moment. There's our headlight, very powerful light, front reflector down below it, which is also on a pivot. So I'm just going to aim that all forward for now. And that's it for now. First thing I'm going to put on is the fender. We're going to put the fender on first before the front wheel, because the front wheel is going to be in the way of the fender if we do that later. So don't be in too much of a hurry to make it look entirely like a bike yet. So we're gonna get this guy on. Again, looks like the 5mm Allen key is gonna be the favorite today. So on the back of the arch of the fork, you'll have your bridge mount for the fender. And I'm just gonna remove this screw. And you probably notice that I got the bike balanced on its own fork. So just be cautious as you're working with it. You don't want to knock it over and have it fall somewhere. I like to put the tab behind the fork. I think there's really only one choice in this case, but sometimes you do have an option. Put that into the screw hole. I don't find it any necessity to put grease in this one, but if you wanted to, it wouldn't harm it. So I'm just tensioning this down. And before I tension it, I'm going to lift this up because I want the more clearance for the wheel. Then you'll probably hear the Allen key touching the fender. Just snug that up. And there we go, that's one part in. And then down below here for the fender stays, we got our mounts on the forks. And this is going to be using, on the back side, an 8mm nut, which I'm going to hold down with an 8mm wrench. And in this case, a 4mm Allen key to undo the bolt. So holding the nut and turning the bolt, we're going to undo one side. As I'm doing this, try to save all the parts, keep everything neat. I'm going to put this one on the brake side pretty much as far down as I can get it without it hitting the, sort of feeling like it's spreading open. I'm talking about the plastic piece here. I'm going to try it on this one just to see. You know what? And that's going to do two things. One, hold the stay, and two, allow you to tension it down so it's snug to the fork. So holding the nut, turning the bolt, put some tension on it, and that's nice. Not rotating on the fork, perfect. Not every bike build works out exactly like this. I often will put this on the outside, but with the size of the bolt that they offered, it was a little bit tight to get that extra bit of thread that I would have liked otherwise. And the same thing on the other side. Just going to do the opposite. Remove that bolt, holding the nut. And nuts off. Take the washer off. Put the stay between. You'll see there might be a bit of a twist to this. You can rotate it so that it fits into that gap a little straighter. And the one thing I wanted to do, I want it to be the same height as the one that I first installed. So two things. Just before I snug these bolts down, or this bolt down, I'm going to do an eyeball measurement. I'm going to use this Allen key, and it's right at the tip there. So I'm going to put this on this side. Just a detail that I like to see everything being symmetrical. It also will make a difference on having the fender not look crooked or be twisted. As long as these are both at the same level, it'll make for a neater job. All right, fender's mounted. Now we're going to take the front axle out. I'm going to mount the front wheel. Front axle is mounted with a 6mm Allen key. So there's our 6. I'm just going to spin that out. It's using a through axle, and that's going to be threaded into that side of the fork there, the left side of the fork blade, and it just passes all the way through. We'll take that off. And again, I like to put a little bit of grease on the axle. I'm just going to put it not on the threads, just a little bit on the actual shaft. And when I push that through the wheel and through the fork, it'll add a little tiny bit of lubricant and keep everything running smoothly and moving smoothly. So over here, we got our wheel. One thing I just noticed, there's two spacers that are that come with the wheel. One's on the outside, and it's just like for the through shaft to keep the wheel spaced. And I noticed that this one was missing, and I thought, uh-oh, we lost it. Well, it turned out it was attached to the packaging. So if you find yours is missing, chances are it's stuck on here, or it may have fallen into the bottom of the box. Most likely it'll be on here if it's attached. So I'm just gonna pluck that off, and that's the little piece that we were looking for. And this just fits on the outside of the axle. Very simple to install. Very important that you have it though. All right, so now we're gonna try again. Like I said, we're gonna mount the wheel. I'm just gonna push that axle over. Before I can mount the wheel, on the inside of your brake, there's a little safety spacer. So this little plastic piece is to keep the brake pads from being pumped out by accidentally pumping the lever and then closing up the brake, or possibly even pumping the piston out and having your brake leak or bleed itself out. So we remove that. You may want to keep this. This can be handy in the future for doing service, where you can push this back in. So now we're going to mount the front wheel. Rotor goes into the caliper. So here we go. I'm just going to lift up the front end. I'm going to roll this guy into the caliper. And we're just going to approximate the spacing. Now some of you might find this a little bit tricky, and I am finding it tricky too. There we go. And we don't want the bike to fall down. So I'm pushing the axle through, and I hear another click. This is where it's touching the thread. Now I'm going to take my 6mm Allen key. I'm going to put it inside the hole here to tighten this down. And by pushing inboard, there we go. It's turning in, and it'll get snug. And again, not a ton of force is necessary. I'm just going to tighten that down, and she's good to go. So front wheel is now attached. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the kickstand to save me having an extra hand. And now this bike is very, very close to being finished now. The bars, of course, are loose. So I'm going to go to one of my favorite tools, 3-way Allen key. Has 4, 5, and 6mm Allen keys on it. Again, we're going to go to the 4, or now we're going to go to the 4. Here's our 2 pinch bolts that keep the bars from turning. So the first one that we tightened, adjust the headset. Adjust, not tighten. Remember that. And you can test that, and I'm going to show you how we're going to check for the play to make sure our headset's properly adjusted. But first, I'm going to tighten the bar to the steer column. Turning these down just a bit. With your own judgment, you're going to line up the stem to the front wheel so it's aiming forward. Because you don't want the bars looking like that. That wouldn't be fun to ride. Then we get it straight. And a couple of gentle taps. That's approximately straight. I'm liking that. Now I'm going to snug this down. Do both bolts in the same tension. And you'll see by the effort, I'm using one hand. I'm not cranking these down like they're axle nut bolts or pedal bolts. And that feels tight, and that's good. Now the other thing I mentioned, checking the headset adjustment. And this is where we just squeeze the front brake, and we're gonna rock it back and forth. And that's exactly what I didn't want. See that motion? And you can hear a knock and a click. So essentially, this headset isn't properly adjusted yet. That's an easy adjustment. So we're gonna open this cap up, and I'm going to go back to my 5mm Allen key. I'm going to keep my 4mm handy. So what I want to do, I'm going to open this up. I'm going to drop this down so I can get access to the bolt that's on the star nut on the top of the steer column. And what I want to do is adjust this down, turning it clockwise. Before I can do that, I've got to loosen the stem again because I've clamped it to the steer column. So it's not going to move very well or at all as long as this is tight. So I'm going to turn that off by a turn on each screw. Then, as you can see, I'm just turning this down, not tightening. And I'm feeling a bit of resistance at my fingertips. Again, we can test. I'm going to squeeze the front brake, and it's almost there. I'm putting my fingers here at the headset and the frame. You can actually feel a tiny bit of motion if you can't see it or hear it. And just that little feeling of the headset moving around means that I can add some more tension to this. Put a tiny bit more. And I like that. And it's rotating smoothly. Now, before I finish, I'm going to aim the wheel forward to the stem. Maybe take this out so I can get a better judgment. I'm going to clamp the stem back down again. And you may have to go back to this one more time. Luckily, these adjustments are quick and easy. So I'm just setting up the bar, clicking that, aiming it forward once again. So the stem is in line with the wheel. And then we give it a snugging again. A little bit of tension here and here. And before I give it the final tension, I'm going to check that headset for adjustment one more time. Front brake on, rocking it back and forth, feeling for any play. There isn't any. You may notice a tiny bit of play or flex. That's normal in the fork. The fork has bushings. As the fork moves up and down, it's got to pass through some bushings or bearings, and that little tiny play happens to exist on this type of a fork. Not an uncommon thing, don't let it worry you. All right, I feel good about this. Headset's adjusted, bars are aiming forward, and just so that I don't forget later, I am going to snug this down. For safety reason, you don't want this bar turning without the fork turning with it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Bars are tight. This is getting real quick now. One thing I always do when I set up a bike with a new seat post, I'm going to grease the seat post into the frame, or grease the frame for the seat post. That just keeps allows the post to move smoothly. This doesn't have a steel frame. We're not worried about rust in here, but corrosion does happen even on aluminum. So a little bit of grease inside. And one little tip I also do, we got our quick release here, and it runs on a cam. And in this cam is a little tiny bushing or a little brass bearing of some kind. Just behind it, I'm going to put a little tiny bit of grease. Move it through it. That makes this quick release close smoother with less effort, and also giving you more power or more clamping power on the quick release. Now I'm just going to put this seat back in again. I'm going to adjust the quick release so that I got resistance at about 90. Give it a squeeze. And now our seat post is tight. In this case, the seat's level already from the factory. That's a nice job. And because the factory installed it, we just want to make sure that it's properly tightened. I wouldn't want the seat post starting to move around on us. Underneath here is a 6mm Allen key that's beneath the seat post clamp. And I'm just going to put some tension on it. From the factory, this was reasonable. As a matter of fact, I only gave it less than a quarter turn. That was good. Liking it. And one of the final things as we approach to the build, we're going to put pedals on. Pedals will come in this package here. They gave us alloy pedals with 9/16 threads. Pedals are left and right, just like your shoes. And more so than that, they are specifically threaded left and right. So, and going back to what I said before, we always grease everything, so we're going to grease these pedal threads. But if you're not sure which is left or right, sometimes they're stamped. Here we'll see a WL and a WR. So the L is for left, R is for right. I'm putting a tiny bit of grease on. And again, you don't have to bathe it, just enough on there so that the threads won't seize up in the future. Using a pedal wrench, you can use a 15mm combination wrench or a 9/16 combination wrench. Please try to avoid using SAE tools, as you may have SAE Allen keys, which can cause a lot of damage to the Allen keys. Remember, use metric tools only. So here's a proper pedal wrench. I'm going to install the pedals. The one that says WL is going to go on the left side. Left side pedal is also a left-handed thread, so counterclockwise to tighten. So you probably heard the old term righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Well, here we're going to turn this to the left. Turning it clockwise, you can turn this forever, it's never going to go on. But turning it counterclockwise will allow us to start the thread. And I'm just going to spin this down a little bit. You get a little bit of action there. And then finally, we're going to tighten it down with a pedal wrench. These you can tighten down pretty much with about as much force as you can put through a normal wrench. Pedal wrenches happen to be really long, so you can get extra leverage out of it. And now that I'm almost tight, you can see I'm putting some effort into that. All right, left pedal's on. Now we're gonna go to the right side. Right side pedal, right hand thread. So every screw that you've ever installed, probably just like that. So clockwise or turning to the right. I'm gonna start priming it up. I'm just gonna spin her down a little bit. Then I'm gonna get our wrench on here. And of course I'm pedaling in the same direction as the bike wants to pedal. So putting some weight on the seat so the wheel doesn't spin. Oh, there's the wheel spinning. Let's try stopping the wheel from spinning. There we go. Pedals are on. All right, we're getting very close to the final build on this thing. So forks are on, front fender is on, handlebars are on, bike's aimed forward, and seat post is in, pedals are in. Final check we can do is checking the gears. In the case of this, gear adjustments is something I normally don't cover in a bike build video, but one thing I do want to check is something called overshift. So the bike came in from the factory in low gear, so I'm going to shift the shifter, making sure it's in low, and if I'm not sure, clicking it back will take you to the higher gear, and you'll see the derailleur is moving away. I'm just going to go back to the last shift, which is low, and what I meant by overshift is checking to see if I push the derailleur by hand, there's the normal flex and there's the adjustment of it too. And I can see that the derailleur is trying to do a little bit of overshift. Overshift is where if you go into first gear and let's say you aggressively shift, you might throw the chain right over the first gear in between the spokes. And sometimes the derailleur gets caught on the spokes and will break off. Usually doesn't happen on a new bike, but that's a reason why you want to tune and keep your gear systems operating, especially after your bike has been dropped. Should the derailleur be bent, you might end up with an overshift or the loss of certain gears, and of course, inaccurate shifting overall. And we've got three screws. One is a tensioning screw, which allows the derailleur to be pushed backwards in this direction. I'm happy with that screw being set that way, and this will be the upper and lower adjustment screws to stop the derailleur from going over the first gear or past the high gear. Turn this screw down. In this case, it's not the one that I wanted. There we go, that's the one. So just with an adjustment, there it is touching the plate, and I'm just gonna go back about a third of a turn or a quarter turn and making sure that that adjusts properly. This is kind of a preset just to make sure it doesn't shift past. And for those who are interested, I'm going to go through the gears somewhat. Bear with me on the awkwardness of this because I don't have it in a stand where I can pedal it through everything. So I'm just going to pedal backwards and forward while shifting. And I'll show you how I do that. So, just going to pedal it back. I'm going to click one gear, and I want to see one gear at the back end. And looking down at it, we're in gear number 2. I'm going to pedal back again to the kickstand. Click down to 3. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and finally 10. So we're in 10th gear. And again, that overshift test that I did before, we're going to do it once again. So I want to see if the derailleur can be pulled further away easily, and as I can see, it's locked. And if you're looking straight from behind, you're going to see the chain is in the 10th cog, and the jockey wheel up right here, which does most of the shifting work, is directly below that, and the idler wheel is down here just to pick up the chain tension. One little function I mentioned, I was talking about the clutch. On the side of this derailleur, there's our clutch adjustment. So we have an on or off. And if I pull quickly and abruptly on the chain, you'll see that the spring in here is moving like it is right now. Now, when I go to put it in the clutch on, and you'll see there's a difference. That's softer, and that's tenser. What that's going to do is it's just going to stop the chain from slapping around. Kind of a nice touch. With this massively extended gear ratio on the back, there's a lot of extra chain slack. It had to be picked up somewhere and controlled. And that long cage on there and the clutch mechanism will keep that from making all kinds of odd noises, possibly tossing and throwing your chain, and keeping your bike running a lot smoother. So I'm going to leave it with the clutch on. I kind of like that function. I think everybody will too. So the gears are good. Brakes, we trusted that the factory got it right, and usually they do. I'm just going to lift up the front wheel and spin the wheel, making sure it spins smoothly. And normally if the brake was rubbing, it would just automatically, or not automatically, it would just slow down and stop. In this case, it's rolling very smoothly. The only way it's going to stop is if I should grab the lever. Rear brake is good. Front brake, we're going to check the same thing. I'm just going to lift up the front wheel, give it a spin. I'm not hearing any scrubbing sound or disc brake rubbing, so we know that that's good. If that adjustment was required, there are videos that we would have, or we have, and you can find videos out there on how to center the brake rotor to the caliper. We won't go into that because that's more of a tune-up thing. So this bike is almost ready to go. So you get 2 keys, a little identification tag giving you a number of the key, and you'll see here, scan this QR code for your manual. So your manual will be online. So this little tag here will get you to that site. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to take the battery out and also turn this display on. I'm just going to take one of these keys out of here so that I can take the battery out and show you that part too. Well, there's our key. Battery port's keyhole is right here. So this is the only need for this key, is just to undo the battery. You'll put the key in, you'll turn it. This unlocks the battery casing. There's a little quick release lever here. I'm just going to pull down on it. You'll see the battery pivots away. And just so it doesn't fall, I'm going to support it from the bottom. And here's our battery. And in this case, what do we got here for a battery? 15 amp hour by 48 volt. Nice robust battery. Beautiful casing, color matched as well. So as we were looking at the battery, we got the tangs on the bottom where it mounts to the connector here. On the top of our battery, we've got a little battery meter, and you press that button. It's going to light up, showing you the condition of the battery. In this case, it's fully charged. Also, that quick release acts kind of like a handle, so you can carry this battery around when it's off the bike. Put the handle down. We're going to mount the battery by putting the bottom end in first. And there we go. Bottom end first, so it just sort of pivots, and then that's it. She's locked in. Nice and secure. Nice and sleek. Looks like there's no battery at all on the bike. Very well hidden, very well sort of designed for aesthetic reasons. Okay, and in reality, this bike is pretty much done. I will be pumping the tires later, but we won't bother doing that at this point. Tires are going to be rated from I think 24 psi up to 40. I'm going to put about 36 psi in there to make them nice and firm. And now we're going to go to the display. So here's our display. Here's our selector switch. Here's our throttle. On the selector, we'll have a couple of buttons. One's called the mode. There will be an up button and a down button to take you through different functions within the modes, and the almighty power button, which we're going to turn on now. So I'm going to hit the power button, and that's going to start up the display. Our display is going to light up. It's going to show us all the details. Battery status. It will have the pedal assist mode, the speed that you'll be doing, the power meter on the side showing you what wattage, both as a bar graph and as a numerical graph as well. You got our clock and our odometer there. And the one thing I'm just going to do, the most important thing for most people who are going to be buying this bike, do you want to get going? You want to know what speed you're doing? There's many functions that this display can do, but the one you're going to want to set for sure is going to be your speed from either miles an hour to kilometers an hour. In order to do that, we're going to turn the display off for a moment. Then I'm going to turn it on. While it's booting up, I'm going to hold the mode button. You're going to see something called unit come up. If I hit the mode button upward, whoops, back up. I didn't want to go up or down. We're going to hit the mode button while it's in unit. You'll see that miles an hour will be flashing. If I should hit the down or up button, it'll go to kilometers an hour. I'm going to push and hold the mode button to lock it in. Now she's in there, and that's all we're going to do for this. The display has more functions that it can do, things like backlight and so on. We're not going to get into those details today. So this concludes the Pilot bike build on this model of bike. I hope everybody's enjoyed this video. If you do, please do a like and share, and pass the word along to your friends. We'd love to see you, and definitely got to try this bike. I'm very impressed with it.